I'd kill you if I can get away with it. Listen, Dana, you need to take that post down. It's ruining my reputation.
You don't want to become scrutinized. Maybe you shouldn't, be naked for a living.
Oh my God, you do have my shorts. What are you doing with them?
I decided to take your advice from the other day, and I'm making my profile on WLW.com.
Oh, let me see. It's a good picture, but it doesn't really show off your assets, if you know what I mean.
You have been the face of this company for the past few years.
Yeah. I am provocative lingerie.
It's you against Sandy. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I don't know why they wouldn't want fresh face in any way.
They have to actually pretend that other girls have a chance.
I'm sure that they're looking for a younger look, as I would say.
Scene. 4 of the film presents a fascinating shift in focus from individual introspection to the dynamics of public visibility, competition, and relational negotiation, centering on 2 professional models, Sandy, an experienced Hungarian model whose career has been defined by consistency and professional recognition, and Adriana, an emerging talent from the East Coast whose recent rise represents both novelty and the pressure of youth in a socially mediated industry. And while the superficial framing of the narrative may suggest rivalry or spectacle, the film carefully abstracts these elements to explore the emotional and psychological complexities of women navigating professional hierarchies, social comparison, and self-worth in high-pressure environments. And by structuring the scene around a professional contest, the narrative illuminates how women's identities and self-perceptions are often intertwined with public performance, external validation, and the negotiation of social and professional recognition. And in this context, the tension between Sandy and Adriana is not merely competitive, but deeply reflective of internalized pressures, anxieties about obsolescence, and the desire for acknowledgement. And the film deliberately emphasizes the ways in which women's interactions in such contexts are governed by both overt social protocols and subtle emotional negotiation, highlighting how professional and personal recognition can function as a site for emotional and relational complexity, particularly when women's visibility is tied to socially constructed metrics of success, youth, and aesthetic value. And the interactions between Sandy and Adriana therefore offer a lens through which to examine queer and heterosexual women's experiences of relational negotiation, admiration, and subtle forms of attraction that may emerge in competitive or high-stakes environments. And the film frames these interactions as opportunities for self-recognition, reflection, and the emergence of interpersonal connection, showing that women's relational lives, even when situated in professional competition, involve ongoing ethical and emotional labor in responding to others' presence, assessing social signals, and negotiating both personal boundaries and relational possibilities. And while the narrative ostensibly revolves around a contest for career visibility, it foregrounds the ways in which emotional curiosity, respect, tension, and quiet mutual recognition can emerge even in moments of apparent rivalry, illustrating that the development of intimacy and understanding among women often occurs through subtle attentiveness, dialogue, and the careful calibration of response, hesitation, and engagement. And these dynamics are particularly resonant for queer audiences, as the film portrays the formation of complex emotional awareness and mutual regard in a context where societal pressures often require women to mask, downplay, or rationalize feelings of admiration, attraction, or ethical resonance with one another. And in emphasizing the interior lives of both Sandy and Adriana, the film highlights how women's emotional navigation is shaped by a combination of self-reflection, ethical consideration, and relational attunement, where every gesture, response, and negotiation is imbued with the dual imperative of self-preservation and relational integrity. And the dialogue in the scene, while outwardly about professional achievement, subtly foregrounds these interior calculations, showing how women assess the impact of another's presence, manage the stakes of visibility, and negotiate emotional and social boundaries in ways that are ethically and psychologically sophisticated. And through these portrayals, the narrative illustrates that emotional connection and desire among women are rarely simplistic or unmediated, but rather emerge through attentive observation, reflective engagement, and careful responsiveness to the other. And the scene's focus on shared tension, mutual assessment, and emergent recognition allows viewers to perceive the ways in which relational curiosity and admiration can develop in contexts of apparent opposition, demonstrating that queer and heterosexual women alike experience relational complexity as intertwined with social observation, ethical reflection, and the calibration of emotional visibility. And by situating these dynamics within a professional setting, the film extends its broader thematic project of exploring women's interior lives, relational labor, and the negotiation of desire, visibility, and respect in contexts where social norms, hierarchies, and public scrutiny shape every interaction. And this framework enables the film to explore how women navigate the intersection of professional ambition, social evaluation, and interpersonal complexity, and how these negotiations resonate with queer women who may experience similar pressures in environments that require careful attention to perception, ethical engagement, and the management of emotional exposure. And the narrative further examines how competition and relational tension can paradoxically create space for emotional recognition and connection, as Sandy and Adriana's interactions oscillate between assertion, assessment, and tentative acknowledgement, revealing the subtle emergence of relational curiosity, attentiveness, and ethical awareness. And these dynamics illuminate how queer and non-queer women develop the capacity to understand themselves, assess others, and cultivate nuanced emotional insight in situations that are socially complex and professionally demanding. And the film's decision to present these moments as emotionally resonant rather than sensationalized allows for an exploration of intimacy, recognition, and relational ethics that is both psychologically authentic and socially relevant. And by emphasizing dialogue, gestures, and relational negotiation over spectacle, the scene foregrounds the ways in which women cultivate awareness, mutual respect, and tentative trust, even in contexts marked by competition, public observation, and hierarchical pressure. And this emphasis on interiority and ethical relationality positions the narrative as a meditation on how desire, admiration, and connection among women emerge within a constellation of social expectation, professional responsibility, and personal reflection. Highlighting that emotional intimacy and recognition are processes that require negotiation, attentiveness, and ethical engagement, rather than merely spontaneous or performative expression. And the film thus critiques societal tendencies to erase or sensationalize women's relational lives, particularly those that are queer or emotionally intense, by insisting on the seriousness, nuance, and authenticity of women-centered interactions. And by depicting Sandy and Adriana's engagement as a site for relational and emotional exploration, the narrative challenges the persistent cultural discomfort. With women expressing complex emotions toward one another, whether those emotions are competitive, aspirational, romantic, or ethical in nature, and it underscores that such discomfort is often maintained through social pressures that require women to remain legible, restrained, and socially compliant. And the film resists these pressures by foregrounding the ethical and emotional intelligence women exercise in navigating social, professional, and relational spaces, demonstrating that relational development among women is a sophisticated interplay of attention, restraint, ethical reflection, and emotional attunement. And the portrayal of Sandy and Adriana also reflects broader patterns in queer relational life, including the negotiation of power dynamics, mentorship, social hierarchies, and professional boundaries, illustrating how women often translate, justify, or downplay their feelings to remain socially and professionally legible, while simultaneously cultivating authentic emotional connection. And in doing so, the film positions emotional intimacy as a practice of ethical engagement, mutual recognition, and relational responsiveness, emphasizing that connection is as much about careful reflection and attentiveness as it is about feeling or desire. And the narrative further emphasizes that women's experiences of longing, recognition, and self-validation are embedded within social structures that frequently demand performance, self-surveillance, and negotiation, making the subtle emergence of relational recognition and curiosity particularly poignant, as it mirrors real-world dynamics in which women's relationships with one another must navigate visibility, judgment, and ethical accountability. And by situating this story within the context of professional competition, the film allows for a meditation on the ways women cultivate self-confidence, relational awareness, and ethical clarity under conditions of scrutiny and expectation, highlighting that admiration, tension, and relational curiosity are legitimate and socially intelligible vehicles for emotional expression in cultures that often fail to accommodate women's interiority. And throughout the scene, the interactions between Sandy and Adriana underscore the layered negotiation of desire, self-recognition, and relational attunement that characterize authentic relational development, providing a lens for understanding how queer women, in particular, negotiate both internal affect and external perception in ways that honor ethical responsibility, relational awareness, and personal integrity. And by focusing on these aspects rather than sensationalized competition or physicality, the film affirms that women's emotional lives are complex, culturally significant, and worthy of attention, while also modeling a queer-sensitive approach to desire and relational engagement that emphasizes subtlety, ethical reflection, and mutual recognition. And ultimately, Scene 4 contributes to the film's broader thematic investment in exploring women's interiority, relational labor, and the cultivation of emotional and ethical awareness, demonstrating how intimacy, admiration, and mutual recognition among women can emerge even within contexts of rivalry, visibility, and social expectation, and how these moments resonate with both queer and heterosexual audiences by validating the nuanced, ethically engaged, and emotionally attentive ways women navigate their relationships. And by situating these dynamics in a socially rich and psychologically resonant narrative framework, the film insists on the importance of portraying women's connections as serious, complex, and meaningful, reinforcing the broader cultural project of rendering visible the subtle, ethically engaged, and emotionally nuanced dimensions of women-centered relational life. And in doing so, it asserts that recognition, intimacy, and relational ethical practice are central to women's experiences of desire, connection, and self-understanding in a world that often struggles to acknowledge and respect the full complexity of women's emotional and relational lives.